I would say that Fran Brown, I mean, he went and got him a bag. But let's talk about this, Joe. We continue on our series of first-year expectations for first-year head coaches. I thought the coaching world took a, or at least Georgia took a massive hit when Fran Brown left Georgia, goes to Syracuse. I think it was one of the sneakiest best hires. In all of this was Fran Brown going to Syracuse. I do, though, even though I think that, do think we might need to limit some expectations. But he hired a good coordinator, hired some good coordinators. He brings in Will Howard, or not Will Howard. He brings in Kyle McCord. Just got done talking about Will Howard. What do you think about Fran Brown in year one, even though they actually do have a pretty favorable schedule up there in the Qs?
I said this when he was hired. I love the decision by a program like Syracuse to acknowledge that somebody like Fran Brown is an up-and-comer, that he is somebody who probably could have just stayed on Georgia's coaching staff and continued to work his way up, and then eventually taken a much bigger job than this one. But Syracuse realizes, let's hire this guy a couple of years early. Let's get after him a little bit early, and then we can reap the rewards in his first 3 years as a head coach. There might be some growing pains, but we have heard and understand that there is tremendous upside for a guy like this. And Fran Brown has knocked his situation out of the park. He was able to recruit a quarterback who needs a fresh start in Kyle McCord, who I think is redeemable. If you think he was bad or whatever, I understand that. He was very inconsistent, and I even have criticized him myself, but he is still a redeemable quarterback. They also have been aggressive in adding guys like Fadil Diggs, Yazid Haynes, Isaiah Hastings. They have acquired and moved on a lot of SEC talent, as well as focusing recruiting on the New Jersey, New York, Northeast area to create an identity where they are. I think it's reminiscent to what we saw, and I need to be perfectly clear here. Okay. I'm not saying that this is where they're going to get to, but I think it is a Walmart version of what Dan Lanning did early on at Oregon, where Dan Lanning understood that the only way I'm going to compete and be the best in my conference is if I go and get as many SEC guys as possible, as many big body guys as possible, physical football players, former 5-star, 4-star guys that maybe didn't pan out, and I develop them. We're going to be good in a couple of years. And I think that Fran Brown's going to hit the ground running in this upcoming season because he was able to capitalize on some of these guys not getting on the field early.
You know they're gonna absolutely kill you in the chat when you talk about Dan Lanning and Fran Brown in the same.
They're okay. They both come from a Georgia coaching staff. They both share similar philosophies in roster building. I'm not saying that they're going to go to the college football playoff. I'm just saying that could they be one of the better teams in the ACC? Could they be a top 4 team in the ACC? I think it's very doable for them to do in the first year.
Here's my thing with Fran Brown. Okay, Joe, I really stay with me here because what I'm going to say is going to really degrade him in a way. Okay, but it really doesn't. If Fran Brown would not have made the coordinator hires that he made, I would have been really worried for him. Because you're talking about a position coach that doesn't have a lot of play calling experience. We would have had the same conversations with guys like Orgeron in the past. Guy doesn't call plays. He's a position coach. But he goes out and gets E-Rob, right, from Texas A&M, who built the ridiculous class and the outright ridiculous, just quite honestly, recruiting classes at Texas A&M. Then he goes and gets Jeff Nixon, who's going to coach running backs as his OC. That is where I think they have success because now you have 2 elite recruiters that actually can call plays. E-Rob called it at Texas A&M, or helped call it at A&M, was the interim coach, interim head coach when Jimbo got fired, and you have Jeff Nixon here. Here's the thing, too. He has surrounded himself by so many elite guys in recruiting. Like you got James Villano, okay, who a lot of people in the industry think is going to be one of the better hires and additions, even though he's going to be on special teams because of what he does in development. They got Ross Douglas, too. Ross is a guy that I have heard and talked to, actually from the Boston area, believe it or not. It's been with the Patriots, that a lot of people are going to be a passing game coordinator. Imagine the Cortez Hankton of the world who is now the LSU passing coordinator. I'm just using LSU because it obviously I'm right here, but I think he's on that same track and trajectory. I think it's very interesting who everyone is that he brought around him. I think that is his ultimate success because he can go out there and recruit too. Now, you talked about earlier, or even when we talked about this when he was hired, the favorable schedule. Here's the thing with me with Fran Brown as of right now, before I see more in spring and all this kind of stuff. I'm just always skeptical with a position coach becoming a head coach, regardless of who it is. Okay, like I legitimately lived it. Like myself, as a fan of LSU, lived it. Joe, I do think 8-9 wins could be plausible, but I do think that that may be their ceiling. And I think that that's fair.
Oh, yeah. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pound the table and say that this guy's going to win 10 games in year one. That I would be out of my goddamn mind. No, I say it again.
You made it feel that way.
Again, there's always a misperception on what I'm saying and what I mean.
Compare the dude to Dan Lanning and you and me not feel as if that you're saying 9-10 wins here.
Again, I to be clear, it's the Walmart version. Okay, this is
Dr. Pibb is pretty good.
I love Mr. Pibb, man. We talked about this.
Dr. Pibb,
Mr. Pibb, damn it. Pibb. I think 8 wins is on the table, and these are I could only find on their schedule like 3 tough games. They have a ridiculously easy schedule that they've been handed. These are the 3 hardest games that I noticed. NC State, which they're probably going to lose. Virginia Tech, who's supposed to be better this upcoming year and showed some good things.
We would hope.
And Miami. The rest of their schedule is like all of the bottom feeders of the conference.
Well, they're a bottom feeder of the conference.
They have been, and I think that they're good enough. The biggest thing here is that they added athletes that don't typically play in the ACC, and they're one of the few teams that has a quarterback who's played in high-pressure situations and high-pressure games. There's not a lot of situations where Kyle McCord is going to be backed up against a wall. He's not going to be in an environment like the Big House or like Penn State.
With 2 picks, it's bad, but it's not as bad as if it would be at Ohio State. I agree.
Exactly my point. I just 8 wins feels like a really good number, and I think that we're going to be talking about Syracuse and Fran Brown at the end of the season as, a team that's going to continue to take some huge steps.
That's fair. I do see, and my sleeper playoff team, and we probably need to talk about them at some point, Joe, is the Miami Hurricanes. I'm with you on a lot of things that you said. Could they be this year's Louisville? Because remember last year, Braum comes in, but Braum had a lot of head coaching experience. But, Joe, I got to admit now, there was a team in the ACC. Somebody said that, they're favoring a little bit here. Somebody said that they could make a run. I'm just saying, when we did first-year expectations last year, okay, of coaches that could be knocking on the door of a playoff, we picked Louisville. All I'm saying here is we've seen it a couple of times here in the ACC. Mac Brown was on the cusp. I think he had a 10-win season when he first came out of the gate. So we'll have to wait and see. But I do like Fran Brown a lot.
Yeah, I also will go as far as to say I wouldn't be shocked if Fran Brown is not a guy who's brought up for openings at the end of the season, who might not get hired away, but is going to be always like a 3rd or a 4th guy on a list for a bigger job, and then everyone's going to be like, oh, it's too soon for him. I think there's a lot of potential for that.
Very much well could be. The thing, and I see this from Andrew inside the chat, he says that Cristobal is the worst coach in the ACC.
Agreed. That's actually probably.
I mean, he's still just right at above 500.
He's one of the best. He's probably the best recruiter in the conference, but he's probably the worst in-game decision maker because of how much he's messed up. Yeah,
without question. But the problem though is, and I think we get tempted. He's not going to be worse than Jimbo in game.
No.
Right.
I would hope that after what happened last year that he takes some of that decision making off
he
his
beat
plate.
Jimbo this year.
Right. That's all the evidence we need.
That's all the evidence we need. So, oh, by the way, he's got Cam Ward, man. I'm just telling you, man, we're gonna have to talk about this Miami Hurricane team. I'm telling you, I'm so fired up for them. I'm really excited because can I tell you something? Of all the years that everybody tried to say that they're back, I got to admit something. I finally think that we got to look at them and say, man, this could be the year. All the other ones, it's like, yeah, you're not going to, like you still suck. I don't know about this one, Joe. This one feels a little bit different.
If there's a team in the state of Florida that is going to be this year's Florida State, it's not Florida, it's Miami.
Oh, God, they're going to fire their coach by week 7. I mean,
some people have tried to paint that argument. Some people have tried to paint it's the third year. Maybe things will turn around. There's some positives, and no. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.